Okay, welcome back, folks, to Zupi, the Autotelic Mindset Podcast. Joining me today is Greg Stewart, Olympian gold medalist, my first gold medalist and Paralympian athlete on the show. He is, I guess it's F46 shot put Paralympian. So I'll kind of get you to explain what that exactly means. But that's kind of his sport and the title, Paralympian gold medalist. Greg, thanks for coming on board here. I greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Not a problem. I appreciate you reaching out and thinking about me and whatnot. But yeah, just to clarify, so yeah, I'm a F46 Paralympic shot putter. The F46, F stands for field. There's T and F, track and field.
Okay.
F being field because I'm a shot putter, and the 46 is the ambulatory classification. So I was born missing my left arm below the elbow.
Okay.
And so that's what my Paralympic classification is. There's multiple other classifications from people with cerebral palsy, blind athletes, lower limb deficiencies, you name it, kind of thing. It's the unique thing about the Paralympics and whatnot is there's just a high level of inclusion, and they do a really, really good job of representing everyone. So, yeah.
Awesome. So I got a little bit of a question to start off based on a post that you made, and I kind of want your opinion because I've read it and I was like thinking about it. And you said sometimes how you can get labeled as an Olympian or Paralympian. And being a Paralympian, how do you like to be recognized? Because you pose that question to the people out there, and it seems like a simple question, but when you really get to think about it, it can be a difficult question with regards to, because you're separated from Olympians, and then the Paralympian, should it just be one? And I just want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great question. It's still a question even today where I'm still kind of trying to understand it myself. But one of the big things that I'm always kind of in a mindset of trying to recognize, at least, is the view of the person that is presenting with me, whether I'm a Paralympian or Olympian. So somebody calling me an Olympian, even though I'm a Paralympian, I think there's importance to allowing people to know, like having the knowledge around the fact that I am a Paralympian, but at the same time too, I don't want to take away from their experience. And what I mean by that is if they feel strongly that I'm a Paralympian or an Olympian, and that's their viewing and everything like that, I don't want to take that away from them. It's like the whole concept of when somebody says like, hey, you did a really good job there, and then you deflect that instead of saying thank you and be like, oh, thank you, well, I didn't really do all that great or anything like that. They don't actually get to live that experience of being like going out, being vulnerable, sharing that, hey, we're really grateful or really happy with what you did, when you deflect it with the, oh, well, I didn't actually do that great or that sort of thing. Same kind of concept. So, when I'm coming across kids or families and they're like, oh, look, it's Greg Stewart, the Olympian, the gold medalist, Olympic athlete. I don't want to steal their thunder. I don't want to take away from that experience. But at the same time, too, it's Paralympic, right? Olympic. They're still, they're very, very similar words. And then if you were to look at the Paralympic movement, our logo are called the agitos. They're three little swooshes, and those mean parallel to. So parallel to the Olympics. So realistically, in my mind, because we're not above or below or beside, we're running parallel with. Whether I'm a Paralympian or an Olympian, to me, kind of almost it feels the same way. Don't get me wrong, there are people in the Paralympic movement that are, no, you are a Paralympian, that's the only way to go, and that's totally fair. But right now, I'm just taking whatever kind of shows up, and I'm grateful that I can just be part of any type of movement and be able to compete at that world stage. So
yeah, I like that.
Long-winded answer.
I like that, and like this, a lot of this, you being my first Paralympian, and a lot of this information is going to be new to me, which I like doing these podcasts, learning about different sports, and kind of like you said, there are different movements as well. So, like I said before we started talking, I had a little kind of story about how I kind of came across you. And I kind of believe like things kind of happen for a reason. When I'm looking for my athletes, it's usually from a friend of a friend, or I come across them somehow and I make a connection. I'm like, I want to try to reach out to this person. So I was just kind of scrolling through my social media and clicking on just different social accounts, and um, came across your name and clicked on your feed and started listening to some of the stuff you were preaching about, and that really hit home with me with regards to mindset, balance of life. And right away, I didn't hesitate. I want to reach out to you right away, and lucky enough, you're pretty quick to reply. Which sometimes with the athletes in their schedules, you don't get that right away. You got to be patient. And literally, I kid you not, that same day, I got a message from, see if you remember the name, is Jason McClintock.
Jason McClintock. He's not the wake or ski guy, is he?
Water skier, yeah.
Water skier, yeah.
So
Yeah.
I had him on, and he messaged me. He's like, Ryan, like you gotta have this guy on your show as a guest. And he says your name. I'm like mind blown. Like I'm like, Jason, I literally just messaged him, and he replied to me like, and I'm like, this is just meant to be. I'm like, I gotta have you on. Just some of those things that come across, and I think it's just, like I said, just meant to be. And it was a funny little thing. Like I kid you not, that day he messaged me and was like, I met this guy in the airport. Like I think he'd be a great athlete to have on your show. So
that's funny. Yeah, Jason and I that was a very random interaction because we were waiting in I think it was the Calgary International Airport, and he was like standing in front of me in our lineup. We talked for like 2 minutes, and then we hopped on the plane, and that was it. And then when we landed in Atlanta, he was going down to like Miami. I was going down to Bradenton, Florida, and I went to some restaurant, like not near the terminal where we landed, and I sat down, but it was right at the entrance. And he walks up the stairs, and I'm like, "Want to join?" And then so we got talking, and I shared with him just kind of like my sporting background. Then he was telling me he was like a national team water skier and everything like that. And then I had my medal with me, and so we got some pictures together and everything like that. It was such a random interaction. And then you're telling me this now, and I'm like, wow, thanks, Jason, for bringing us all together. So
crazy how things sometimes come to fruition.
Absolutely.
So I want to get into this with regards. Well, I always like to start kind of at the beginning. Obviously, you were born missing the lower part of your arm. So I'd like to think as a child, you developed a certain mindset, just not having your full arm like other kids. So kind of walk me through just growing up, and what it was like as a child. And then I can see from your background right now, you're heavily involved in sports, many sports. Was that always the case, or was that something you kind of grew into?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that I think is really important, and it's important in my story and whatnot, because I was born missing my left arm, that's the way life started, right? I didn't have an accident. I didn't have anything that all of a sudden during my life, all of a sudden a huge like adaptation. I had to relearn everything. Because I was born this way, that has been my life forever. It's a question I get all the time, but people are like, well, how does it feel to have one arm? And my answer is, how does it feel to have two? Because I don't know any better.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important because that has helped shape my life to where I'm at today. I've always been in sport. I started with soccer, like many kids do. Just run around, kick a ball, just burn some energy so you can sleep tonight, kind of concept. I shortly after that played lacrosse for about 7 or 8 years. Again, I wore a prosthetic when I was doing it, just to allow me to hold the stick a little bit better. But one thing that people don't know in this podcast right now is I'm also really, really tall. So I'm actually 7'2". And I just weighed myself. I'm 357 pounds, which is a little on the heavy side for me right now. But I'm a large guy and everything like that. So back in those days when I was a kid, like let's say 9 or 10 years old, I was a little bit taller than most of the kids.
Okay.
Kind of where my peak for an adolescent was I was 6'8" when I was 14 years old.
Oh wow.
So I've kind of been tall my whole life. Then I was super, super skinny. Don't get me wrong, I'm still skinny, but I was my height drastically impacted my life and everything like that. But I've always kind of been in sport. And honestly, around that 14, 15 year age, that's I think when I really started to look into high performance sport, or at least compete at a higher level. Because at 15, I joined our national disabled volleyball team. And I did that for about 15 years. And then took a little break there, and then that's when I got into shot put. So I've kind of multi-sport there, and at the same time too, I played 5 years of university basketball at Thompson Rivers University, which that was an able-bodied sport. So I've kind of done a mixture of both. I've both been in the able-bodied side and the para side, basically my whole life. I'm actually playing rec league soccer right now.
Nice.
Yeah, coming out of retirement 30 years later, and playing that with a girlfriend and stuff like that. So yeah, the sport's kind of been, it has been my life, honestly, for the last 20 years. It impacts my daily life on a daily basis. And I'm very grateful that I did choose to go that. But with my arm and everything like that, I kind of said at the very beginning, it was just all about learning to adapt. I know I'm seeing different. I'm seeing more different now because of my height, not even because of my arm.
Mhm.
It's kind of funny. Little kids notice my arm more than adults do. I think it's because little kids, children, everyone's a giant to them, right? You said you tucked in your little one. Your little one's a lot smaller than yourself and everybody else around you. So adults are all seen as giants. But what children notice is they notice differences.
Yeah.
They recognize when something's different, and because there's innocent children, they don't at that time they don't know not to say anything, so they always point out, "Oh, what happened to your arm? Oh man, who cut off your arm?" All those all those conversations. And so, I've always been well aware of my arm. On top of it, being somebody who's labeled as disabled, and don't get me wrong, I know I am, and I'm grateful to be disabled because it's allowed me to do what I'm doing today. There's always this sense of, and this is more the mindset conversation, is the sense of wanting to be a part of something, wanting to fit in, right? Growing up, with social pressures and everything like that, all we want to do is have something where we feel a belonging of some sort, or we have that sense of connection. And so for me, growing up, that's all I ever wanted. And then all of a sudden, I got really, really tall, and then sports kind of paved the way after that. So that's kind of like the quick intro to how sport started for me.
Awesome. And do your parents play a big role in this? It seems, do you come from a background of family that played sports, or just something you kind of just gravitated towards and they said, kind of run with it?
Yeah, my family's an extremely loving and supporting one, but we're not an athletic family, I'd say. Myself, my older brother, maybe are the ones that do a little bit more physical activity, uh, but I'm definitely the one that's gone over and beyond in terms of high performance. My dad was in the RCMP
Okay.
here in BC, basically throughout Canada there. So he was a police officer for 40 years, and I moved around a lot. So it was also kind of tough to stick with a certain sport because I was constantly moving, and depending on the community that you're in, some are hockey heavy, some are basketball heavy,
Yeah.
some are volleyball heavy, right? So you just kind of adapted to the community that you're in, and you just took part in what you could take part in. And I think that played actually a big role in all the multiple sports that I played over the years. But don't get me wrong, my parents were still huge supporters. They were definitely ones to be like, "Hey, if you want to do it, do it. We'll definitely, support you and help you do your best at it. But if you also don't want to do it, don't do it, and we'll support that, action too." So they were great supporters, but they definitely weren't the ones that had the
Sports
athlete
background.
background.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's funny you're kind of talking about different sports, and a lot of these conversations that I have, I pose the question, and it just gets brought up organically. Is you know, is it better to be a multi-sport athlete and then have to make that decision, or do you believe in specialization and sticking to one thing and just becoming extremely, extremely good at it? So, from your point of view, what would you suggest, or what's your opinion?
The timing of this question is very unique. So I tweaked my back 2 days ago, and I got a hip injury right now because I've been doing sports other than shot put recently. I've been golfing and playing co-ed soccer,
Okay.
which are not any but related to shot put. Um, and why I'm bringing this up is because I think it's important that we're always doing multiple sports. Now, don't get me wrong. I think my success to shot put came from only doing shot put, but it's the after part. If the discussion I've had with my coach is that, I want to do multiple things. I want to make sure that I have cardio. I want to make sure I have overall strength around my body, strength on my left, strength on my right. Um, good core strength, everything like that. But shot put is all about moving heavy weights fast, right? So it's all about heavy lifting, pushing hard, lifting hard. But it kind of take away from the other little muscles that are just kind of your supporting muscles and stuff like that. No cardio,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
The only cardio I get is from lifting a heavy weight really quick, right? So, I think it's important, getting out, going for walks, going for a run, doing something that's increasing the heart rate other than just lifting. You know, getting out, working on my footwork, moving my feet around, everything like that. I think everything can support itself down the line. I think being very sport specific can be good for the sport, but I think it's also important that your body can recognize other movements, because when it doesn't, that's when you create injury. And that's what I'm dealing with right now. Is I'm in a place of injury because I'm doing other things, because my body doesn't know what the hell is going on, because it's only used to certain movements. And so I think it's important that we give ourselves the opportunity to take part in other things. Now, I'm not saying that, if you want to be a high performance, figure skater or speed skater or track and field, hockey, whatever, maybe during the season, you're specific to that, but in your off season, doing other things, wasn't it Wayne Gretzky that played hockey and then would figure skate and, the off season, just to work on his ability to skate and move around people and everything like that. Like, I think having multiple sports under your belt will definitely help your career moving forward.
Yeah, I like your points that you made there. I agree with them, but like you said, it's hard. I asked this question because, like you said, we're in a special time where athletes are like the level that athletes are getting to at now younger ages. A lot of times because they're focusing strictly on that sport, or they idolize someone or an event. And it's like the technology, the coaches are so have so much knowledge that specializing them gets. I said it increases their time of development at times because of our knowledge of what we know in the sport and even in the fitness room, because the fitness room is very key to sports as well. So I'm a multi-sport athlete growing up, and so I kind of lean more to that way. And I agree with like developing other parts of your body, and your just spatial awareness is huge. But just with the knowledge and background these coaches, players, athletes have access to, I find you're seeing a little bit more specialization, if not at the beginning, more like sooner than later, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it's just I like to bring that question up.
Totally. No, it's a great question. So my girlfriend is she's a soccer coach for an academy here in Kamloops, and we have this conversation quite often, actually. And for instance, she coaches a U7 soccer team. No, a U7 academy team. So not just like, general rec running around, kicking the ball. Like they're training them on the technique, they're training them on the movement, the understanding of the sport. If you were 10 years old and joined that group that started, you're 3 years behind already.
Yeah.
Right. And they're kids. And there's such a toss up here, because it's like, well, yeah, I also think there's a lot of, supporters out there, guardians, parents, coaches, everything like that have that expectation that their child is going to be the next best and greatest. And there are millions of them, right? Millions, and, maybe even billions, who knows? And, it's good to have that mentality in a way, but it's also important to recognize that there's still a children, and there's that mentality too. And there's that development that we also need to take into consideration, because when we're not, well, what are we actually creating then? Right. I'm really curious what, 25, 30 years looks like from now, when these children are, being put into these high developing sports at a very, very young age. And whether they're going to be coming out of the place being like, well, I missed my childhood.
Yeah.
I didn't actually get the opportunity to experience it. Right. I had that experience when I was 15. I didn't really get to experience like my 15 to 18-year-old because I was on a national team. Right. And so like when I was 20, 21, I was kind of like in this mental space being like, oh man, all I want to do is just hang out with friends and like party a little bit. But, when I'm 15 years old, but, 15 years old, right? 17 years old, just, I just want to hang out with friends and like do stuff.
Yeah.
Where
100%.
before, I'm constantly getting drug tested. I'm representative of Canada. I'm always in a place where I'm being watched over.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, well, I lost that part of my childhood. It's just like all the kids the last 2 years with COVID. So many kids are like, I just lost the last 2 years. I lost my graduation. I didn't get to grad with anybody. I didn't get to actually take part. I'm coming into this, into the university very lost because these last 2 years were so unstructured that I don't know what I'm doing at the university level. So that was a rant. But I don't know if you want to edit that out.
No, it's okay. It's what yeah, I'm talking about sports, but like this is life too, right? Making sacrifices, and you know, do the friends, the social life, kind of have to take a bit of a seat to the side in order for you to increase your performance in the sports field, and vice versa. Do you need to kind of step back from sports and hang out with the friends and family, just to create that balance in life? And I think as you move up your career, that I call my balance board, sports, your career, your friends and families, relationships, personal development, it changes as you grow. And as an athlete, and we'll talk about as well, is like just making those changes where they need be in order to create that balance. So no, it's a good point, and relevant to where we'll go with this conversation. Saying that, I want to just learn more about shot put, and I always ask my athletes, because every sport has different qualification process. Olympics being a 4-year process. How does shot put? How you qualify for the Olympics, and how's that process work?
So for the Paralympic Games, it's all the same as the Olympics. So you have to throw standard. So in the track and field, you qualify like 3 to 6 weeks before the meet. It's before the Olympics themselves.
Oh wow.
So team sports, it makes sense for them to select the team about a year before, because then you have the team together. You can work out any of like the bumps and quirks and whatnot. But on an individual sport level, I think they want you to be at your best right before the games are there, so that you can even excel at your best there. So like selection and everything like that the games were the end of August, and they were selected at the end of July, middle of July, I think, is when our Paralympic team was announced. But yeah, in order to get selected, you got to, have standard. In my case, I think it was like 15:20 or something like that. My PB going into the games was 16:30. So, I was fine there. And then, yeah, basically just go from there. So that's basically selection. You just got to, obviously you got to declare that you want to go to the games, that you're a Canadian citizen and everything like that. But that's just more the political spectrum of it. But yeah, throw standard and go out there and do your best.
And then, so say you throw standard, do you still have to, like, yes, you make Team Canada, but then you have to, beat out other countries. You have to be in a certain, you have to be ranked internationally to get there as well.
True. So yeah, I guess there is that other side to it. Yeah. So on the Paralympic level, I think you had to be considered for top 8 in the world on the Canadian side. So you had to make standard. You have to be ranked, I think, top 8. And then on the Paralympic side, at a world event, so like world championships, depending on how the team does, determines the amount of slots that are available for athletes to compete at the games.
Okay.
We didn't have a great showing at the world championships. So the guys only had, what did we have? We had 9 available slots, and then the women had 6 available slots. So we only had 15 or 16, I think, in the end. So it was a smaller team. I got second at Worlds, so I had a slot for us. and so that was why I was able to go and compete. And so, yeah, that's kind of how like the slots work, and then how you get selected onto the team. And
Gotcha. Yeah, it always just blows my mind, like how when you talk about it, how hard it is to make the Olympics. I don't care what sport it is. It's like those, like you said, you only have so many spots, right?
yeah, well, and that's the Paralympics too. Like Paralympics is different. Like that's how we get selected. But then on the Olympic side, it's also based on points.
Yeah.
Right. And so depending on the meets that you attend, how many points you get for, depending on how, whether you win or lose, it's all points, which then creates a ranking system. And that's when you get determined for your event and whatnot.
Awesome. So what was I was talking about goal setting, for Olympics, it's a 4-year process. How do you break that down into year by year, month by month, day by day to hit that, like you're saying, that peak just as you're heading into the games?
It's funny. I think I have a different approach when it comes to setting goals. I, it's something right now I've been tossing up a lot, but the path and the direction that I chose for goal setting was not so much setting goals, but more so as setting intentions. And I'm still playing with the wording around it. But for me, it was more just a daily, in the moment kind of intention. Because, sport's a really interesting thing. We set these goals or we set these intentions for like outside of us. So way over here, we want to go to the Olympics or the Paralympics, or we want to win a gold medal, or we want to, make standard. That's the ultimate thing. But in order to achieve that thing there, we have to be in the moment now to make it happen. But we are so good at not being in the now and focusing on the whole process and making ourselves feel overwhelmed or not good enough or not competent enough to achieve that end result. And I found that over the last few years, my main focus was to not kind of get caught up in that external side. Don't get me wrong, I'm still a human and I still definitely got there, but to put more practice and emphasis on, okay, well, today I'm just, I'm going to breathe. Today I'm just going to show up to practice. Today I'm just going to, I may not eat the healthiest meal, but today I'm going to eat a good meal that, can fuel myself for tomorrow. That's where my focuses are going to be. I'm going to get mad at my coach. The intention wasn't I was going to get mad at my coach, but if my coach said something and I got frustrated about it, I was going to get frustrated about it. And just allow myself to kind of be in it more, because the more I was in it, the less I was focused on like what the outcome would be or what the achieving the great thing outside of me, because like I don't have control of the thing that's outside of me. Like I can't do anything for that. The only thing I can do is, take charge of my actions and commitments that I'm doing now, and then create for what can happen tomorrow. And so, I've kind of changed my view on the whole goal setting, because like I'm hearing myself, I think I still set them, but I don't put near the pressure or near the amount of work or whatnot around it, because I think in a way it's a direction, but it's a meaningless direction, because if I'm not focused on now, it doesn't matter what.
100%. 100%. I agree with you. And I always get into like finding flow state, right? With these athletes. And a lot of times my thing is like, why is this term flow state not being brought up more? But then I'm having these conversations with the athletes and we never say flow state, but we talk about the now, the present moment. So it's constantly being brought up. And I think talking to these athletes and talking to yourself is, putting strategies in place or tools that you have in order to keep you present. Because like you said, you're a human being, we get sidetracked, and especially with like media, the world's moving so fast and we're seeing things real time. It's hard sometimes not to get caught up in the future, and having goals and putting those pressure on you. So I think finding that balance and trying to get into that flow state, that present moment of now. I think athletes talk about it all the time. We just don't. The term flow doesn't always arise, um, but it's always there, and it's just finding those moments, like you said, day to day, tournament to tournament, and tapping into those moments, like you said, through practice and through some of the tools you have access to, whether it's in the gym, your coach technically. I know we'll talk about is you have someone you just talked to about everything, whether it's a life coach, sports performance, different names, and we'll get into that as well to create balance. And like you said, when the final result or the final outcome kind of disappears, we're able to tap into, let's call them the feel goods, and that's where we perform our best. I truly believe, and you're speaking from personal experience. And I like it too, because you're talking about your day to day, right? Like you said, eating a meal doesn't always have to be competing.
Hmm.
So it's such a great, it's becoming more talked about with regards to the mental health side of things. But I like to kind of back it up and kind of go off with what you're saying. I just call it self-care, right? If we're taking care of our mental side, then hopefully things don't escalate to the mental health side. But I think everyone can use self-care, and it's different for everyone. So I like your philosophy around goal setting and trying to stay present and in the moment as much as possible.
Well, totally, and I think it's really important. Like we had this conversation the other day on another podcast there, and it's like we go to the gym to take care of our health and our physical fitness. We eat right so that we feel good. But how often are we actually nurturing and taking care of our mental health side of things? And it's not very often. Now, don't well, sorry, I can't say it's not very often, because it is important that we take that time to think about the food that we are going to eat. We're not, instead of having a greasy burger, we're having a salad. We are taking care of our mental health that way. But it's the thoughts and the feelings and the body mind connection that we don't often talk about or look at. And it's very, very important, right? Um, you know, uh, if we're not maintaining, if we're not having that balance like you're talking about, um, you know, something's going to happen. And it's not something's going to happen; it will happen,
Yeah.
right? It's not going to happen. It will happen, and we will all experience it. It's just when. But if you're taking care of all of it, and taking care of the tools and whatnot, it might not feel as bad. So,
Yeah, I totally agree with you. So yeah, just going off this, like I like to call it the balance board, and like we're talking about. My question to you is, um, how did you get in tuned to this idea of being in the present moment, and kind of living your life this way? Because for a lot of the athletes and people in general, it takes a lot of years or experience to like tap into this type of stuff. And then to that question, I know you talked to, you can tell me if it's a sports psychologist, a performance coach, mindset coach. You can tell me, how did you know to find someone, and you knew that would elevate your game, or you knew it's important to your performance? Are kind of my two questions around that.
yeah. So, um, kind of what got me to the place of practicing a little bit more of a mindful approach. When I finished playing university basketball, I was the CIS Defensive Player of the Year. I was on a bit of a high, and I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll go play pro. Um, I ended up not playing pro, and I ended up graduating. But my last year of university, I wasn't playing basketball because I had no more eligibility left. And I felt that disarray of feeling lost, confused, going through what I will almost say almost every athlete goes through, especially at like a high performance level, an identity crisis,
Yeah.
self-identifying. Because forever I was like, oh, I see myself as Greg, but realistically, in real life, I was seen as basketball Greg. And so after graduating university and doing really poorly when I graded, because I didn't have that structure, I wasn't sure who I was, all of that. There was about a year and a half or 2 years where I was just like what's going on? It was constantly confused, constantly frustrated, upset, lost. And I was trying to find something. And then I came across a program here in Kamloops called Breath Integration Coaching and Training Center. And basically it's group therapy and individual one-on-one sessions. So one-on-one sessions with an empowerment coach, and then group therapy or group sessions to work together to move through things. And with the trainings and stuff that I did with them in our group stuff, I really got to learn that I'm not the only one that feels this way, right? I got to learn that even though we all experience different scenarios in our lives, the outcome is the same or very similar. So whether somebody loses a parent or somebody loses a basketball game, we're both experiencing a sense of loss. Now, it might not be the same scale of, how it feels, but, we're also humans again, and we also feel differently with one another in terms of like the levels of it. Because, if it was a nationals and you lost nationals or you lost your dog, to some, they can be polar opposites, and some they can be exactly the same. And so just with, learning about that and understanding that I'm not alone, understanding that we're all feelers, we all feel something, we all experience life. And it's important that we get to express those feelings. And so that's kind of what got me on to the whole concept of being a little bit more mindful and approaching sport in a way of, okay, well, I had a shitty practice today, but I know that we all have shitty days too. And so that brings a little bit more, calm feeling, brings actually more empowerment to me, because it's like, okay, well, I know I'm not the only one here. I know there's support. I know there's other people feeling similar ways. And so that's kind of what got me started. And then on top of it was I started to work with my empowerment coach, Amanda. I've been working with her for the last 8 years. I would see her when I was competing heavily. I was seeing her every 2 weeks. Now I see her every 3 to 4 weeks. And the reason why I see her is so that I can just have a little bit more of a non-biased approach to how my feelings and thoughts and experiences are going. It gives me an opportunity. It gives me a 2-hour session in my daily life every 3 to 4 weeks where I can focus on me. I can get support. I can talk through my experiences. I can talk through my feelings. And I can have that support and safe place knowing that things are going to be okay, that I'm good enough, that even if the outcome isn't what I had anticipated, that I'll be okay. Trusting in the process, trusting that I will be okay no matter whatever comes from it. And so constantly practicing that with her and having that support from her as well as the team at Breath Integration, I think has just brought me to a more level place of understanding my thoughts and my feelings, so that when I'm going into competition, when I'm going into life, I have tools, I have support that can help me move through certain situations. I say this very, very firmly and very, very strongly, and I don't want it to come off as a bad thing, but I feel that every single human being needs to have some sort of support network, needs to have someone to talk to, whether it's a friend, family member, but everybody needs to have that venting, that opportunity to talk with somebody. There are literally people in this world that get paid to talk to people, right?
Yeah, and I agree with you, and I like the word what you said. These people create a safe space, and I mean, a lot of times you're going to talk to a friend, a family member, a coach, but also, like you said again, to have someone who's unbiased, who's not necessarily connected to you from a relationship point of view, whether it's a friend or a family, and when you come into the safe space, you can talk to them without them having to judge you. So I think it's a combination of both, having your support system, friends and family.
Yeah.
But I agree. If everyone could have this person, I think it's totally beneficial for you just to, like you said, have your vent, um, good, bad, whatever it may be, just to, release that energy and turn it
So,
into a positive.
well, and the other important part too, and I appreciate you sharing that side too. I think, yeah, it's important that we have, the support, whether it's friends and family, but I think it's also important that we have professional support.
There you go. Yeah.
Where we have these sports psychologists, psychiatrists, counselors, empowerment coaches, everything like that, that are in a professional setting, safe space that does allow us to be vulnerable with ourselves so that we can express and move through things and everything like that. But on top of it, and I hear this all the time, well, I'll go see a counselor when problems happen, right? And that's counterintuitive to the whole concept of seeing somebody in the first place.
Yeah.
The reason why I always encourage people to start seeing people when there aren't problems is so that when a problem does arise, you already have the tools to help support yourself through that situation. Instead of being lost, confused, unknown, losing your mind, now feeling like you're gonna, one, feeling like you're the only one experiencing it. And then two, you're not sure who to reach out to for support because you don't want to reach out support because you feel uncomfortable about what's going on. But if you flip it and start doing and working with somebody beforehand, that discomfort of, I don't want to reach out to somebody, you already have that person there, right? Oh, well, I don't know what to do. You already have the tools now, right? And so honestly, like, I harp on it a lot. When you are feeling great, go see a counselor.
Yeah. I was just gonna say the exact same thing. People think, when they're talking to these people, things are not going so well. But no, you talk to people when you're feeling good, because when you're not feeling good, well, you remember you had that conversation of what it felt to feel good, and you can bring back some of those memories, emotions, unconsciously, and deal with the situation when the time comes, like you're saying. So you know, you go for different reasons, and all of them are good reasons. There's no bad reasons to go and talk to someone. And I totally agree with you. These are People have to understand, these are tools to put in your tool belt, right? Your strength and conditioning coach, he's going to give you tools. Your sports psychiatrist, she's giving you tools, and you just keep collecting those tools, because when you come across these moments, you're equipped to deal with it the best way possible. And I think that leaves you with no regrets in the end. Whether you achieve this goal, you win, you lose, whatever it is, that, hey, I reached out to everyone. My tool belt's full, and I did the best I could, and I can leave, or I can walk away knowing, happy or fulfilled, even though that goal necessarily wasn't reached. But you've done that all you could, instead of, like you said, coming to a moment where your mind's all over the place and you don't know what to do, and it's too late, and you go down a little bit of the tough path to get you back on the good path, so to speak.
Absolutely.
So going into that and talking about mindset and prepping yourself. So obviously, there's one thing to make the Olympics, but you found yourself in medal contention. How does that day look for you? It might even be a couple days leading up, months leading up, with regards to physical preparation, mental preparation, and the day of, where you got that gold medal. So if you can walk us through that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, so trust is a really important thing when it comes to sport, and your coach. Um, Leading up to the games, I was training in Nanaimo, British Columbia, because Kamloops was heavy in smoke. So we had a lot of forest fires going on that year, I guess last summer. So leading up to the games, maybe like 2-3 months prior, it was just trusting in the program that Dylan was giving me. Dylan Armstrong's my coach. He's a bronze medalist from the '08 Beijing Olympics in shot put. Absolute beast. By far the best Canadian thrower ever to come through Canada. And so, yeah, just trusting in his process, trusting in his guidance and everything like that. And so I put a lot of trust in him, but a lot of trust in myself that what he's telling me is going to work. Um, And the unique thing, and I can share this really quickly, when we talk about trust or we talk about things within other people, it's important to recognize that it's not the other person you're putting it in, you're putting it in yourself. So often we get caught up thinking that, oh, well, I'm going to love this, I'm going to show up a bunch of love for that person. Um, but when in reality, it's you showing love for yourself. However, having that said, if you don't trust yourself, you're probably not going to trust the other person. And I have this saying that, if I'm going to give you an apple, I have to possess the apple. If I don't have an apple, what am I giving you? Right. And it's important to do that. And so, leading up to the games, I had a ton of trust in myself and I had a ton of trust in Dylan. And that's kind of where the game started. But then, of course, I'm a human.
Mhm.
And 3 days before the meet, so we're in Tokyo now, a second guessing everything. I was working with our other sports counselor, Penny Worthner, incredible athlete herself back in the day. I think she competed in 76 and 80 Olympics, or sorry, I think 80 is when they boycotted Moscow or whatnot. But she was there to work with me and just kind of talk me through some simple things. One of the things that I learned a lot on that conversation, though, the few days before was like, I shared this with you already, but like we get so focused on the end result
Yeah.
and not on, well, hey, what am I doing right now? Well, I'm sitting in a chair having a conversation with you, right? And that sitting in the chair having a conversation is far more important than the end result. And so, she talked me through it, but I got a little bit, I got nervous, and grateful that I had her support and kind of got me moving forward. And then the night before the games, that, oh no, I'm not going to be able to sleep. I'm not going to be able to do anything. And I went to bed at 10, and I was like quarter after 10, and I'm like, oh no, am I going to have one of these nights? Like, and then next thing you know, I'm out. It was like 10:30, and I was asleep. So, great. I woke up. I was ready to go. I followed the protocol, the COVID protocol for everything there. But two, the plan that Dylan and I had set up. What my morning routine was going to look like, what my warm up was going to look like, what it was going to look like stepping into the ring, everything like that. And my biggest focus for the games was to keep my shot put tight in my neck. And so when I walked into the circle on my first throw, all I was yelling was tight, 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 tight for a cue for me to keep the shot put tight in my neck. And for those of you that don't know, my very first throw in shot put was the Paralympic record and my winning throw. And I threw 1675. And it's kind of unique. Shot put's one of those sports where you throw and then you wait 15 minutes and then throw again, right? So there's a lot of time there where your mind can, sway back and forth, a time when judgment, creeps in. Oh, that guy threw better than me, or, oh, I'm not that good, or, oh, that was a bad throw, everything like that. So I, luckily enough, and Dylan and I trained for it, that we're going to try and throw as hard and as far as we can on the first so that we can put the pressure on the people afterwards. And that's exactly what happened. And so, yeah, I threw the Paralympic record on my first throw. 4 out of my 5 throws would have been technically the top 4 throws in the competition. 1675, 1673, 1639, and 1629. Second place through 1629, so technically tied there. But yeah, what I got from that experience, though, and that, all the time leading up to me, is just trusting in the process, right? Trusting in the fact that if I keep the shot put tight in my neck, that the rest will take care of itself. Trusting in the fact that the direction, the guidance, and the support Dylan's given me up to this point will allow me to do my very best. Trusting in the fact that even if I do poorly, it's all okay, that I'm going to be okay at the end. Whether I finish last or first, I'm still going to be okay. And trusting in the fact that, I will always be good enough and that this medal won't define my value, right? The medal is a token of your hard work and appreciation to your sport, but it doesn't define you as an individual. You as an individual defines you. And so, tons of trust, um, tons of integrity to all of that. And just going out there and enjoying it, right? Being in the moment, right? Keeping it tight, but having fun and laughing and cheering on my teammates when they're racing, and just being in that, right? This was my goal. My goal was to compete at the Paralympic Games.
Yeah, and I like what you said too. I think sports is huge. Is game cues, and having that one cue. I mean, people may have two or three, but just that kind of is your trigger to a greater picture to throw the way you can throw, but kind of all the hard work that you put into one word, even though it might be silly to someone else, to you that word means a whole lot than just keeping it tight to your neck, so to speak. So I think you hear athletes talk about it all the time, having game cues, reciting certain words or passages to keep them honed in to, like you said, the moment, but knowing and trusting the process that got you there for that day and that event is important.
Absolutely.
And I agree with your statement. It's a good statement you made with regards to winning a medal, and that doesn't defy you. And a lot of times, I've talked to one Olympian athlete, and he's like, when I look at my medal, like all I think about is like the hardships, the hard times, the blood, sweat, and tears. Yes, that's rewarding, but like that's mentally exhausting. Like I only look at my medal every now and then because I don't want to go through that again, because once is enough. That it's not your medal, it's it's who you are, your character and what you bring, like you're saying, as a person as a whole. So I think that's a good point you made.
Yeah, for sure.
So I want to kind of sum this up. You've made some, I mean, going back, it's funny, we started at your childhood all the way to the Olympic Games, and the process of, as a kid being accepted. And, I think that was kind of a theme throughout this conversation, even when you were going through a mental hardship, finding a group of people that, are accepting of you and what you're going through, although it doesn't look the exact same. Yeah, we're feeling these emotions, and we're working together as a team. You talked about trust in the process. And I mean, it's incredible what goes into these 4 years, 8 years, 16 years, however many Olympics you do, and carrying on to life. There's so many messages within some of the stuff you were talking about. And I just want to thank you for coming on and sharing that message. And I kind of want to leave here. We started the show, Greg Stewart, a Paralympian gold medalist, but you're a motivator. You're someone who's leading by example in life. And I think that is more than that title of gold medalist Paralympian, like we've been kind of that we've started out with, and kind of made this a full circle. So I appreciate all the advice you've given to people who are going to listen, as well as the work you're preaching. I know outside of your sport, I know you do a lot of talking and all that stuff to share this message, because people need to hear it, right?
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. Ryan, this was an awesome interview. I think you're going to go a lot of good places with this. I think it's important that people just know that it's okay to share, that it's okay to be vulnerable, that it's okay to express your feelings. And that leads me to kind of my own today, own your feelings, own your emotions, so that you can create a great tomorrow. And that's me.
Awesome. I appreciate you coming on and spending the time with us for this little time you have in your busy day, I can imagine.
No problem. I appreciate you having me. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.